Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to address the elephant in the room, and that is the pre-release kit overview for this unit in particular. I'm not going to say their name because, well, if you played the story, you would understand why I'm not saying their name. We're not going to talk too much about it over here. We're going to try to keep this a bit spoiler-free. But with that, we've got the release kit for this unit ready to go, and I'm very excited to talk about what her capabilities are. Unfortunately, well, based off the design of some of her sequence nodes and some of her effects, you're not going to be able to get the full value out of this character and leverage all of her different capabilities unless you're going to have another unit on the roster. But the thing is, their synergies aren't tied nearly as close together as some other units, and this unit has a lot of capabilities across other teams in the roster. And so we're going to be covering all of that today. Let's go ahead. Let's get it started off by taking a look at her basic attack. So this move over here is going to have a bunch of different components to it, and it's actually going to interact with some other mechanics that are going to be built into her kit. We'll cover those later. So she's going to have her basic moon ring attack over here. It's just going to be a 3-hit attack chain, nothing too crazy. She's then going to have her mid-air attack, which is going to perform a plunge, and then she's going to have dodge counters in the moon ring mode. So yeah, those are like melee attacks. She also has a moon bow mode. When she does dodge counters, she'll advance to the second stage, or to the third stage of her other attacks. So Iuno's also going to have some enhanced heavy attacks that are available as well that will basically go ahead and transition her from state to state. When she's in the lunar cycle, that's basically activated when she uses a resonance skill or her liberation. She's basically going to have like this half moon, new moon sort of state going on. And when she does a heavy attack, when she's in the half moon state, she turns it into the moon bow and then goes into the full moon state and then uses range attacks. And then when she uses another heavy attack when she's in the moon bow state, she goes back into the melee mode. So that's kind of like the differentiation over here. She just has like basically melee attacks and melee dodge counters in one state, and then ranged attacks with ranged dodge counters when she's in the other state. And that's basically how her basic works. Now let's move on to her resonance skill and pick it up from there. All right, so it's a little long, so buckle up. Let's get ready for it. So her first resonance skill, she's just going to dash forward and deal arrow damage. Nothing too crazy over here. However, she's going to have an enhanced resonance skill called Closing Refrain. And when she's not in the lunar cycle, which again is triggered by using those heavy attacks or her liberation, when she uses the third stage of her basic attack, an intro skill or her baseline resonance skill, she's going to gain access to an enhanced one called the Closing Refrain. And casting that is basically just going to deal a bunch of arrow damage and then activate the lunar cycle. So as you can see over here, a big part of Iuno's kit is entering the lunar cycle by using a bunch of abilities in her kit. So that's really, the bow mode is kind of like her main one. So when she's in lunar cycle half moon, she's then going to have her resonance skill replaced with unfinished refrain. And that's basically just going to almost look like the same exact attack as closing refrain. So she's going to have that unique resonance skill. It's going to actually share the cooldown. It's going to be activatable in both phases. And when she's in the lunar cycle new moon, her resonance skill is going to be replaced again with another one called Arc Beyond the Edge, which is going to have 2 charges. And casting Arc Beyond the Edge is going to have her basically dodge, shift position, and then deal liberation damage. You're going to notice that Closing Refrain and Unfinished Refrain, right? Those first enhanced resonance skills, they're not going to actually deal liberation damage. So she does have a little bit of a damage split in her kit. So yeah, this ability, Arc Beyond the Edge, that does liberation damage is going to have 2 charges. And she's also going to be able to use some directional inputs. So pretty agile, pretty mobile moveset, which almost makes her feel like a bit of an on-fielder, which is odd considering how strong her overall buffs are. So I do think that she's probably going to be like a bit of like a genuine hybrid sort of unit, because it does look like a lot of these mechanics are built into her kit. And the damage itself doesn't look that bad, even though this is level 1. Now, let's take a look at her liberation. So this liberation is really simple. She just deals damage and then we'll enter the lunar cycle state. And so it can also be used in midair, but you can kind of see her liberation itself is not where a lot of like the complexity of her kit is. Most of it is going to be centered around this Forte circuit. We've been talking a lot about the lunar cycle, right? All the different ways that she can enter it. We haven't really talked about the intense mechanics behind like the whole like half moon, new moon, full moon, all of that stuff. So let's start breaking that down. Iuno can activate the lunar cycle by using all of those different abilities that we talked about. she's got her resonance skill or her liberation. She can also enter into different phases when she's in the moon cycle by using other attacks. So, lunar cycle is going to have two states. She's going to have the half moon or the new moon. And by default, Iuno enters the half moon state whenever she activates the lunar cycle and can switch between them by using her heavy attack. So that's kind of like how all the interactions are working across her kit. Enter the lunar phase using your skill or your liberation and switch the modes by using heavy attacks between them. So when she's in the lunar cycle, Iuno's jump is going to be replaced with a heavy attack, and stamina won't recover while Iuno's in the air. That's going to be her main sort of like resource she's going to have to manage. Her movement is going to become meandering, interesting name, which consumes stamina continuously in the middle of the air to move in a unique manner, because she kind of like floats on her chakram thing and then fires shots in the middle of those actions. So she can't just permanently stay up in the air the entire time. Performing environmental interactions like utilities, flight, or holding jump is going to end the lunar cycle. So yeah, she's got two modes. So when she's in the half moon state, her attacks are going to use the moon ring, not fire the bow. And that's going to restore sentience on hit. She can use her heavy attack, deal liberation damage, and then switch to the moon bow attacks while she's in the air, and then use another heavy attack that's, well, going to be the flux version that's going to switch her forms again. So when she's in the new moon state, Iuno's going to attack using the bow and then have a bunch of these different attacks available. And when she uses a dodge counter, she's going to consume sentience to increase the skill's damage multiplier. You can already see over here, right? She builds up sentience when she's using the moon ring, and then when she heavy attacks and then switches to the moon bow, she can spend that sentience to deal additional damage and also restore some additional concerto energy and heal at the same time. So you can kind of see how her kit is working. You enter the lunar cycle using these skills, either her liberation or her enhanced skill. Then you start building up the sentience in the half moon state using like the more melee focused attacks using the moon ring. And then you're going to heavy attack once that sentience is ready to go, and then start shooting off the moon bow. Then you're going to deal additional damage. You're going to generate more concerto and also heal the members on your team. That's essentially how the mechanics are going to be working out over here. Doesn't actually seem that complex when you're able to piece everything together. So yeah, Iuno can then use the heavy attack flux moon ring to deal arrow damage and then switch back to half moon. So yeah, she's able to freely enter and exit those states. And do recall that when she's in the moon state, the lunar cycle state, the only thing that's really limiting her is the stamina consumption when she's going to be in the air. You can freely switch your forms however you want. You just got to make sure you don't run out of that stuff. All right, now she's going to have another heavy attack. And this one's going to be called Absolute Fullness. So when Iuno's Concerto energy is full, her heavy attack is going to be replaced with Absolute Fullness. And using this is going to end the lunar cycle, provide healing for nearby Resonators in the team. It's going to deal arrow damage to targets that's considered liberation damage. And then it's going to conjure a full moon domain, a little bit like the ruler's realm that Augusta's going to make, a bit of like a area effect. And this can be triggered once every 25 seconds. There's more. In the full moon domain, teammates inside of it and her herself will restore HP and stamina. And gaining a shield inside the domain is going to grant you a stack of the Blessing of Wan Light. So when you generate a shield inside this domain, the receiving resonator gains 4% all damage amp, and that stacks up to 10 times for 40% damage amplification. And I'm going to be honest here, guys. That's 40% damage amplification that currently only one unit on the roster is able to access. It is going to be Augusta. And Augusta's able to access this bonus because she has a passive that grants her a shield every time she does damage. And so Augusta will be able to stack up that bonus to 40%. It's going to take her a little bit to actually get there, but no other units on the roster are really going to be able to leverage this. So, yeah, that's a little bit rough, right? But it also paints the use case of, good golly, do you really need Iuno if the main point of her existence is to kind of be like a Giga Augusta buffer? And this is the thing, right? She has a lot of utility. She has the healing. She has all of that. But in reality, she is basically like an Augusta, like she's basically like Mortefi Supermax. She is a Mortefi Supermax for Augusta and has usability on other teams, but is she the best pull ever? And the answer is, well, we're not super sure yet. We're going to have to see how she works in practice, but this could easily turn out to be a Rosia situation. a Rosia Sanhua situation, right? Where a lot of people, they're seeing now, Rosia is not that valuable of a character. Because she might make the teams that she's on slightly better than if you had used Sanhua or a Dan Jin. But they're not really worth that much. Because a Sanhua or a Dan Jin, or in this case a Mortefi, are already really, really, really good characters. Especially at S6. You're basically comparing Iuno over here in this situation to a Mortefi, right? Who's going to be providing 12% less damage amp for most of the roster. Quite a bit less if you're Augusta. But then Mortefi's kind of going to come in with this massive 20% attack buff if he's S6. And believe me when I say this, Mortefi's performance, also with Static Mist, that's going to give an additional attack buff. Mortefi's performance at S6 with all of these characters, these heavy attackers that I just talked about, is already really, really, really great. It's already really, really, really good. And so the only real use case that I would say when it comes to Iuno is potentially the healing that she provides and the fact that she can actually be a sustain. What I'm thinking is going to be Iuno's best team on release because of these mechanics that she has built in, specifically the healing, is she's probably going to be she's probably going to be the new best in slot on a Zani team. Surprisingly enough, on a Zani and a Phoebe team, she might be the new best in slot. Because A, those teams with Zani and Phoebe lack healing and a damaging amplification skill. And that's the thing, right? With Iuno coming in, providing this heavy attack damage amp, and also providing healing, well, guys, you're now going to be able to run Zani as the main DPS, Phoebe in confession mode as like a sub DPS. Phoebe's outro skill doesn't expire on swap, it has no effects, and then you just go on to Iuno and buff Zani with her, and then also heal the team at the same time. So that's what I think is probably going to be one of the better teams for her in the game. You either pair her with Augusta and make use of this amplification effect, and if you're using like Shorekeeper and Iuno, you're not making a use of Iuno's healing. But if you're gonna run, I'm just gonna be honest here, this team, well, doing it like this kind of sucks because you have no healing at all on this team. It's a little bit rough. But then you put in the Iuno instead with the healing, and this team's gonna become really, really, really good. So those are going to be the two sort of like main options that I'm going to list out prior to her release. Naturally, there might be some other alternatives as well. You know, some Gion teams, some Chakota teams, all of that. But they might just honestly actually be better with Mortefi. But yeah, you will be able to have healing in Chakota Gion as well. But yeah, that's some of the specifications when it comes to her Forte Circuit and this ability. I don't think she's just an Augusta buffer, but it does appear that way if this is the only line you read. But if we're going to be real here, like I said before, if you're on the Augusta team, Iuno's healing is kind of fucking useless because you're using Shorekeeper in that lineup anyways. And so she's kind of she has a part of her Forte that's useless depending on the team that you're on. So it's kind of like a multi-purpose thing, sort of an overloaded kit, but it does give her more use cases and more versatility. So I'm not too miffed by that. That's why I don't think she's going to be a Rosia situation where Rosia's good on like one or two teams and then she's not good enough to really have a differentiator. This girl's got the utility or the raw buffing to make her a differentiator. And, you know, that I think is probably like a level up in the kit design, but it also does make Rosia just look more and more dog shit as time is going on. I think she needs a rework, but that's just me. Anyways, let's start talking a little bit about Sentience and how this mechanic is going to work. This is her Forte Circuit. She's going to have 100 points of it. Using an intro skill is going to restore 40 points of Sentience. Using a Liberation is going to give her 60. All these different attacks, right, that will enter the lunar phases or exit the lunar phases, right? They're going to give her Sentience as well. And when she's in the Moon Ring attack mode, she's going to restore Sentience too. And then she just spends all of it, right, to do the healing and then do the additional damage when she's in the Moonbow state. So, yeah, not actually that complex of a kit, just kind of a little bit wordy. But honestly, one of the more simpler ones to understand. I don't think we really need even, like, gameplay demonstrations to figure out how she's going to work. So, on her side tree, she's going to have crit rate, so it'd probably be a lot easier to balance out crit with her, and then just like a solid attack. Now let's get on into and talk about her inherent skills. So, every time Iuno uses the basic attack, heavy attack, dodge counter, resonant... Anytime Iuno uses any fucking attack, she gains 1 shield equal to 32% of her attack for 15 seconds. And I assume that this has no cooldown because it's not actually there. So yes, Iuno will be using the Crown of Valor set, and Iuno will also benefit from her own Blessing of Wan Light, because this isn't like something you know, restricted like an outro skill. You can just use it whenever you want. All right, so yeah, she has her own shielding. She'll be able to use the Crown of Valor set and then gain 30% attack and 20% crit damage that will ramp up over the course of the fight and be stacked out within, you know, 2.5 seconds. So that'll be there. Make sure you use the Crown of Valor set with the Mia Echo if you do plan on building her. You can pre-farm for it now, which is kind of nice. All right, and now we've got her second inherent skill, and nothing too crazy, no new ridiculous mechanics over here. When Iuno casts intro skill or Resonance Liberation, she immediately gains 5 stacks of Blessing of One Light, which is this thing, and she basically gets 20% damage amp right there. So yeah, I think that Iuno as a character looks like she's gonna have a shit ton of personal damage associated with her kit. She might be one of the most damaging sub DPSs in the game, and from reading all the stuff that she provides, right, her advantages at a baseline are A, she's a crazy heavy attack damage amplification outro skill that applies across every single attribute with no attribute restrictions. She also basically has a damaging outro skill with absolute fullness as well, which is the attack that's only available when her concerto is full. And so that like synergizes, it won't interrupt it. She's basically got a damaging outro skill too. Buffs herself with her own damage amplification, which very few characters have. And then also kind of just has a shield over here, which seems like it might be somewhat decent, somewhat sustainability. And that's going to give her, you know, even more stacking, and of course let her use Crown of Valor. So those are the big advantages that she has over here. She also's got the healing built into her Forte circuit, and so she can take on the role in, like, she's another character, right, that's diminishing the value of Shorekeeper. And assuming that her healing can't actually sustain the team, she's turning into a bit of like a Brant. She's a bit like a Brant, in my opinion, from the way that her kit is designed, but she seems a lot easier to build. Not necessarily as many of the weaknesses as Brant might have, but we'll just have to see. So that's her entire kit. That's her entire overview. Now let's talk a little bit about, well, her sequence nodes. And we've got all the information on those, ladies and gentlemen. So her first node is basically going to be, when she's in the lunar cycle, her attack is going to just be increased by 40%, which is quite a bit. And when she's inside her own full moon domain, which she summons via her outro skill, or via her super enhanced heavy attack, she's going to restore 1 point of resonance energy per second. She's also going to have interruption immunity built into some of the attacks in her kit, like her resonance skill and her heavy attack. So that's, I mean, a 40% attack buff at S1 is pretty solid. I mean, that's actually massive, but maybe her attack scaling isn't that great. We'll have to see on release. Her next one is Resonators in the team with 10 stacks of Blazing of the Wand Light gain an additional 40% all damage amplification. I'm gonna be real with you here. This is one of the worst S2s in the game. From the perspective of, it actually does meaningfully buff Iuno because she'll gain her own Blessing of Wand Light buff, but only for a small part of her rotation because she's got to have full concerto to trigger it. And so you're basically pulling this sequence node to buff one character in the game. Meaningfully, you're pulling this sequence node to buff literally just Augusta. This is my take on this unit. I don't like the design of the sequence node at all. If anything, I would have preferred significantly if this sequence node had just said, everybody in the team gains 10 stacks of Blessing of Wand Light and just removed its restriction of requiring a shield. Because, like, what the fuck even is this? Like, what the hell is having an S2 that only works with one character in the game? Like, brother, this isn't even like other teams where it's like, Kachona comes in, right? And she buffs all arrow damage. Great, every arrow character in the game can use that S2. Lupa comes in, buff fusion damage by 40%. Okay, great, every fusion character is gonna be... This works for one unit in the game currently. And to activate this, you need to stack shields repeatedly, up to 10 times. No unit in the game does this except for Augusta, so it's just, I don't think this sequence node is well designed at all. Honestly, I think it's horrifically designed. And I'm gonna be real, I don't think people should pull it. I don't even think you should buy it from the Coral Shop, to be honest. I know you can get it for free, right, with 720 corals. I suggest you don't even do that. Because it's just, what the fuck is this design? It's awful. That's just my take, though. Get it if you fucking want it. I don't really care that much. All right, now we got S3. I drink deep of their forgetting. It's a bit of a storage spoiler there. When Iuno is in the lunar cycle, damage dealt by her moonbow and all of her moonbow attacks is going to get a 65% damage amp. And within a certain period after performing moonbow basic attacks or dodge counters, she's going to be able to use her resonance skill without interrupting her attack chain. This to me is like, this character is meant to transform into like a pure, like almost like a main DPS at this point. We've gotten attack boost of 40%, damage amp of 40%, 65% damage amp. It's like the way this character scales with like dupes, at least their personal damage, actually does seem a little bit disgusting. I think Fob Master is going to be very happy with this. Yeah, all I see is damage amp so far, and one supportive dupe. And that supportive dupe only works on one character in the game. That's what we've seen so far. Now let's look at the S4. Casting heavy attack, absolute fullness, grants a shield equal to 160% of Iuno's attack to all resonators in the team for 30 seconds. This is dog shit. It doesn't even like work with her like Blessing of Wand Light because you need to stack 10 shields. This gives one shield to everybody. What even is this? What? I didn't think S4s were supposed to be this bad. This thing is dog shit. Now let's check the S5. She just gains a 20% liberation damage bonus. Okay, another great personal damage boost. And now we got our S6. The damage multiplier, heavy attack, absolute fullness is increased by 1600%. Upon casting the skill, Iuno re-enters the lunar cycle new moon and gains 100 points of sentience and resets all cooldowns. So yes, she's just straight up a main DPS over here. You're meant to like outro skill to like herself at this point. Yeah, you basically do 2 whole rotations. You use absolute fullness, which is typically the attack that caps off your rotation, and then you just get into a whole new one. That's what it seems like over here. Because, yeah, this is the one that's available when she's at full concerto. I've got to say, this unit is, to me, is like a pull her at S0 and call it there. Do not pull her extra dupes unless you plan on, like, investing pretty significantly, because it seems like her role is to transform into a main DPS. I think she already has a decent number of main DPS capabilities in her baseline form, but, like, the design of, like, this part of her kit in particular, the whole, Blessing of Wand Light thing, and, like, the way that it gets upgraded in her S2, to me, is just, like, incredibly stinky. Like, it's just, why not, like, buff this, and then, like, I don't know, she shares it, like, across her team? It's, like, this, it only works on one unit, and for any other unit to have any synergy at all with this in the future, they're gonna have to refresh shields. And so, to me, it's just, this character's design seems, like, a little bit confusing. And I don't know what happened in, like, the 2.6 beta to, like, balance it. I don't know who Curl was, like, listening to when it came to, like, the design of, like, the sequence nodes and, like, certain mechanics in the kits. There's, like, some kind of fucked up stuff when it comes to, like, Augusta and Iuno, that where it's, like, slightly predatory, but then also, like, it's, like, nonsensical. Because you would imagine that there would be a sequence node that would, like, loosen the restriction on the Blessing of the Wand Light effect and, like, allow it to apply to characters that aren't refreshing shields. But it's, like, not in here. It's not in here. She just, like, her supportive ability, her sub DPS ability caps out at S0. And then every other upgrade is main DPS. Except one of them. And it's just for Augusta. I'm gonna be real with you here. I don't really, like, something kind of is just maybe a little bit off with the design. Like, they could have made her nodes better or, like, give you more incentive because, yeah, I'm gonna be real with you here. I don't really know where the incentives necessarily are. But, yeah, that's just my take when it comes to this kit. Like I said before, I think the top teams for her, and, again, we're gonna be judging this at S0, I think the top teams for her will be the Zani Phoebe team, and then she comes in as a heavy attack damage amplifier that also provides healing. Great. She's also going to work on, like, the Phoebe Spectral Rover Iuno team, where, again, she's also going to provide healing and the heavy attack damage amplification. Going to be really good on the Spectral Frazzle teams. I think that she's also going to be decent on Chikona Gion, because that team doesn't have healing and also needs the heavy attack damage amp. You can run that team with Mortiphy, but it kind of sucks if you get hit. And then, of course, she's going to be good with Augusta, where you're going to run Shorekeeper, Augusta. I think those are going to be, like, her 4 main teams on a release. Those are probably going to be the ones that we do go ahead and test. I think all the other ones don't really make that much sense with her because there's not really other heavy attackers. If you use her with Rosia, I think I'd probably suggest you, like, uninstall the game if you're trying to test out that synergy, because believe me, it's going to suck ass. But yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, I guess if you have an S6 Rosia, you can use her, but who the fuck S6 that fucking character anyways? So I think that's the situation that we're gonna have when it comes to Iuno and when it comes to her release. again, my take on this unit is you take her to S0 and you don't upgrade any more than that. Now, let's just do a bit of a brief overview of some of the weapon options that are going to be available for her. And this is the thing, I'm just going to be honest. I kind of want to farm a little bit, so I'm not going to do like a full breakdown of the signatures that are in the game. Iuno's signature is actually here. Moongazer sigil, there you go. And I'll just do a very quick rundown of it. We'll do a more official video later. This is going to give you some attack. It's also going to give you resonance liberation damage boost. And then it's also going to give you a stacking defense ignore. This is one thing I will say, though, about stacking defense ignore. It's not actually that good. I think people overhype the shit out of this effect, this whole defense stacking effect. Like, when you, in practice, Augusta's weapon has this same exact passive, right? The difference between using Verdant Summit, which doesn't have a defense ignore, and using this thing is like, it's so small, it's absurd. So, that's the unique effect of this thing, defense ignore, when you know, use a shield. Great. Awesome. She's gonna be able to stack it up. Just use Verity's Handle instead. Verity's Handle essentially just is like Gion's weapon, but in gauntlet form, where instead of giving heavy attack damage, it gives liberation damage. And guess what? Iuno's gonna have a liberation that'll let her use this. The only thing is that it's a little bit short, and I don't think Iuno can, like, oh, wait, my bad. Iuno's gonna be able to maintain full uptime on this effect, because you get it for 8 seconds, and then you can extend it up to 3 times when you use a resonance skill, and Iuno has, like, 40 of them. So, yeah, you're gonna be able to maintain full uptime on this effect, just like how Augusta can maintain full uptime on Verdant Summit. I'm not gonna lie. These characters are, in a way, sort of made for, like, veterans, because if you have the weapons of like 1.0 units, you do not need these signatures at all. Like, the damage performance, like the performance decrease of using like a Zhang Liao Sig or a Jian Sig compared to these Sigs is so minuscule. Your clear time will change more depending on whether or not you miss a crit. The difference between these two weapons is less significant than like missing a crit on your clear time. They're not really worth it if you have these. But if you're newer players, naturally, you're probably going to want to go for these ones, because maybe you just won't pull the 1.0 units anymore. Other weapon options you got, I'm going to be real, Tragic Comedy is a tragic comedy, piece of shit. This thing's some absolute garbage. It's not really going to work for you, unless you want just 8% defense ignore. Abyss Surges is also going to be a little bit poo-poo. Just use Zhang Liao's signature if you have it. Or if you don't, use the BP Gauntlet, or the other BP Gauntlet, because they both increase liberation damage. So it's like, you have like 17 weapon options for Iuno. And I'm going to be real, these are probably going to work okay too. She's got a lot of stuff that's basically going to like guarantee a good bit of her success on release. You pull her at S0, you use one of the existing weapon options, and you probably should just be okay. And with Zhang Liao being free, a lot of people in 1.2 didn't pull him because they got him for free and they pulled his weapon. A lot of people. You can look at the stats. Zhang Liao's Sig is one of the most pulled weapons in Wuwa history because of how that, you know, how that free 5-star thing went down. So, yeah, a lot of day 1 players will have this one ready to go. Just keep that in mind. But yeah, we'll be coming out with a bit more of like an advanced overview of Iuno's weapon later, just when she gets a little bit closer to release. But we're doing a bit of a sneak teaser for now. So, yeah. That'll be that for that one, ladies and gentlemen. So, overall, I would say Iuno's kit is, like... Her kit is, like, good. She has some great use cases. Like, the baseline design is great. But, like, I'm gonna be honest. It seems like the part of the design of it, at least with her sequence nodes, I would classify it, like, as a disaster. I'm gonna be real with you over here. It's just... Something is deeply wrong with like whatever the fuck happened here when it like came to the designs. It's like it seems like the devs like couldn't make up their mind for like what they wanted her to like do, and like the end result is that her kit, this node in particular, just feels really bad, especially when like an S2 is like the stopping point for a lot of people, and having an S2 that works on 2 characters in the game is like on a sub DPS just feels really stinky. But a lot of the other parts of her design, I'm not too particularly miffed about. However, I will say, if this whole Blessing of the Wand Light thing, in practice, this 40% damage amp, like, just turns Augusta, like, into, like, an absolute demon, and then, like, this interaction only works with Augusta, I mean, that's a little bit disappointing, but we've already talked about the fact that these use cases that Iuno has with this outro skill, they're going to expand beyond Augusta, but they're just going to be missing out on that damage amplification piece. But I'm not sure if Augusta needs that much damage amp. So, yeah, that'll be that. I would say the real competitor that she has is with Mortifi. And so this is going to be the breakdown. If you have Iuno and you're using her with Augusta, you're basically going to gain 90% damage amplification for your Augusta, which is absolutely absurd. It's a fuck ton. But if you're not using her with Augusta, Iuno will basically be competing with Mortifi's 38% damage amp alongside his 20% attack boost. And then you get another 14, 15, 16% from static miss. So around like 30-something% attack and 38% amp from Mortifi. This means that Iuno will actually be outperformed by Mortifi in a fair number of teams just from like the buffing side. I think Augusta is going to be the only one where her raw buffing is going to pull through. But her healing that she has on her Forte circuit is what's going to give her the edge on Mortifi in a couple of teams. Because, well, Mortifi doesn't provide healing and enemies can do a lot of damage in game modes. So, yeah, she should bring a couple of other lineups into viability, and we'll be making sure to explore those once she releases. But yeah, that'll be that for this one, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe not the news that you wanted to hear when it comes to this kit, but I would say, once again, S0 unit, use Zhang Li's weapon, use a BP weapon, do not heavily invest in her, because I think you'll be a little bit, unless you really want to make her a main DPS, because I think you'll be a little bit disappointed by, well, what she's actually going to contribute to your teams with more dupes. So yeah, that'll be that for that one. Let me know what you all thought. Peace.